Hi and welcome. I'm Annette Altmans, founder and CEO of the Men Project. In this workshop titled False Accusations in a Relationship, the Emotional and Psychological Impact, I'm going to define false accusations, what they are, what they sound like, and why this tactic is used. And I'm also going to go over the emotional and psychological impact this manipulative behavior has on the person on the receiving end. And then we'll close out by talking about how to recognize patterns, how to protect yourself, and rebuild trust in yourself when it's been so undermined. You'll walk away with fresh insight and tools to prepare you and help you heal. Okay, everyone. Hi, I'm Annette Altmans, founder and CEO of the Men Project. It's great to be with you here today for our workshop. Now, this is a little bit of a long title, False Accusations in a Relationship, the Emotional and Psychological Impact. So I want to go over participation guidelines. We love it when you participate, when you make comments, when you support each other in the chat. It really does enrich our time together and it benefits everyone. So please share them as they come to mind so you don't forget what you wanted to say. We'd also like to request that you please place your questions in the Q&A box for our time so they can be shared with ease, because it's hard for us to find the questions amongst all the chat comments. So that would really help us out a lot, and it'll help your question get our attention. Everything will be addressed anonymously, so you don't have to worry about your name being shared. And I want to let you know that we're going to continue to address all your questions here in our workshops for the remainder of 2025. However, in 2026, our Q&A time will be largely held in our Restore Coaching webinars. And that's something you can sign up for on our website in our Tools and Resources page. We're going to address a few questions in 2026, but we're not going to run over the allotted time. So we really encourage you to consider joining us for the Restore Coaching calls, where all your questions will be answered. Just a quick note. Oh, and I want to let you know that we're going to start using the term webinars instead of workshops. Our community understands what a workshop is, but people outside the community are not readily understanding what workshop means. So we're going to start transitioning over to webinar. In this workshop today, it will be recorded and it will be emailed to you. And all the previous recordings of our workshops are available on our training and resource page and on our YouTube channel. Okay, so let's get started. False accusations in a relationship, the emotional and psychological impact. What are false accusations? False accusations are unfounded claims often used to destabilize and control you in an abusive relationship. Men defines it in our terms and definitions handout, which you can also find on our Tools and Resources page, as stating a negative lie about the other to place them on the defensive and divert focus from the abuser's destructive behavior, or to divert focus away from the abuser having to be held accountable or responsible. So a common examples would include like accusations of you cheating, or of you lying, or of you manipulating them, using terms that you used first to describe their emotionally abusive behaviors in ways that mischaracterize you as the abusive one. It's very common for abusers to claim that the victim is the actual abuser. They'll fabricate events, or they'll misrepresent conversations. Like they might say something like, "Oh, you don't want to be married to me," or something out of the blue to divert the focus. Or they might take a little bit of truth, but distort the whole meaning behind it. I remember being at a restaurant, and this was many years ago, and I didn't want to tolerate how my husband was speaking to me, and just the whole stonewalling that was happening. And so I decided I was going to calmly get up and leave. And then later, when we were in a couples therapy session, he distorted that whole situation as though I made a scene and stormed out. And the therapist was then focusing on the minutia of that event rather than the pattern of behavior, which was the false accusations that kept occurring to divert the focus in our sessions from what was really happening. I was being stonewalled, and now I'm being falsely accused. So it's a very effective ploy to throw you off balance and to throw other people off balance that they may be speaking to, or that you may be speaking to. So it's also using a little bit of truth to confuse you or scapegoat you to others in ways that blame you for something that you did not do. Or it's catastrophizing claims like, you don't love me, when you know that that's not true, but it's just meant to hijack the conversation and steer it off course from what it's a master deflection. And deflection is another term, but it's a way to blindside you, throw you off balance, and distort the conversation and derail it, take it off course. These tactics are not about truth. They're about control, and they're about emotional dominance. It's about keeping you confused and taking the ground out, like solid footing out from under your feet. So why do false accusations happen? It's really about control and power, keeping you focused on defending yourself instead of noticing the abuser's behavior. So suddenly, I found myself in that therapeutic session having to explain what really happened, which took so much time, wasted time, which served exactly the purpose of the false accusation, which was to take the focus off of what really needed to be discussed, the patterns of behavior, the stonewalling, the false accusations that were repeatedly occurring. It's also about projection. The person making the accusation may actually be projecting their own guilt or fears or things that they're actually doing, they blame you for doing. Like I mentioned, blaming, accusing you of cheating. If they do that, they're likely cheating. That is a form of projection. It's also has to do with insecurity or attachment wounds. And attachment is a whole other conversation, but it has to do with how they formed a relationship or how their parental guardians formed a relationship with them as children. So is it an insecure attachment? Is it a secure attachment? Those things, security comes from your parents being very emotionally available and allowing you to talk about emotions and helping you process emotions. But when you're shut down and told, there won't be any crying in our house or things of that nature, it creates an insecure attachment. And those disruptions in attachment affect later in life how they're attaching to you. So it's not an excuse. I'm not making an excuse for it because it can be very destructive, but it is sometimes a root cause. It's also part of an emotional abuse pattern. A consistent pattern of false blame points to a larger abusive dynamic. So if there is a pattern of false accusation, it took me months. I was going to say, you may not even recognize that it's happening. It took me many months to recognize that when I was in a therapeutic session in couples therapy, that this false accusation pattern kept reoccurring. And each time it happened, I didn't see the bigger picture. that this was emotional abuse, that this was a pattern of behavior. I just found myself full of anxiety trying to defend myself for things that I didn't do. I was being mischaracterized, and the topic of discussion was completely distorted, and it was very, dysregulating. And that's what I was focusing on, not recognizing the bigger picture. So you want to recognize when it's happening. You might be blindsided in the moment, but later, when you think back on it, or if you journal, you can document it and recognize these patterns so that you won't be so blindsided when they happen in the future. Once I realized what was happening, I was able to just go, okay, here's this again, and just name it for what it was. Another reason they use this is to avoid accountability and responsibility. They literally will say and do just about anything to place the blame on you rather than own what they did. They have so much shame and so much discomfort with emotions and being responsible that they will do whatever and say whatever to keep you at fault, to make you be the responsible one. They'll do this in private, and they'll do this in front of others to scapegoat you. So what is the emotional and psychological toll that these accusations can cause? They cause you confusion and sometimes intense self-doubt. It's a very effective form of gaslighting. They blindside you, so you are completely off kilter and oftentimes forget what you were trying to talk about in the first place. You're just suddenly defending yourself and falling into the trap of a false accusation, which, like I said, is so dysregulating that you don't even recognize what's happening. It causes emotional and mental exhaustion, particularly if you don't recognize it for what it is. You'll spend so much unnecessary energy defending yourself or explaining or trying to rewrite the narrative to what it accurately was. But if you don't recognize it, you sometimes might even be so gaslit by it that you're confused and you have a hard time remembering what actually occurred because you doubt yourself. Am I remembering this incorrectly? Did I do that? And you go into a space of self-blame. And that's because the victim side of the equation is usually more empathic, and they're willing to self-reflect, and we're not ashamed of being at fault. In fact, if it's our fault, we know we can fix it. So a lot of energy goes in to wondering what our responsibility is. But the other side of the equation, the offender side, they don't self-reflect. They have an outer critic. They are interested in blaming you to avoid having to look internally at their own actions. There's just a missing chip there, a missing link, and a need to power over and control the narrative. There could be feelings of guilt that you feel and worthlessness. You're beaten down over this extended period of time, and your first reaction will likely be guilt and self-doubt for something that you're not even responsible for. So notice how your body feels. Your body is the first signal that something is terribly wrong. You might not recognize cerebrally, cognitively what is occurring, but your body is going to tell you there's going to be anxiety. There's going to be a gut feeling that this is off. This isn't what I remember. What is wrong with this scenario? And so I want you to learn to get in tune with your body and really listen to it and take a pause. Don't feel like you have to respond in a moment where you are confused. Take a pause and, take a step back, or say, I need a few minutes, and give yourself a chance to regulate your emotions, take some deep breaths, and think about what actually occurred. It's going to likely also cause anger, frustration, or even sadness once you recognize what's really happening. You may feel these feelings, which are warranted. And that said, you'll likely also feel overwhelmed, this overwhelming sadness once you discover that these are intentional patterns, these are intentional ploys to dismantle you. You have to face the reality of just how far the offender will go to harm you as they aim to protect themselves. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And it does create sadness, but it's so necessary that you do recognize these patterns, because what you really need to get to is a place of radical acceptance, really understanding these are deliberate actions and they may be automatic on the offender's part, an automatic reaction to being confronted. But it's still a deliberate choice that they are making. And when you realize that, it creates a lot of sadness. But beyond that, I don't want you to then go into, how can I fix this? I want you to have this experience of radical acceptance so that you are not gaslighting yourself and trying to believe that things are going to magically change when they likely are not going to. It also creates isolation from others because it's difficult to share with others in a way that they will understand. It's hard to articulate covert emotionally abusive behaviors. So you retreat, you ponder, you obsess, you ruminate over what's happening and what choices you have to maybe make things better. And I really want you to not isolate. I mean, there is a time for isolation when you're trying to figure things out, where you need to educate yourself and learn all that you can, where you need to journal so that you can really identify the patterns of behaviors. And the purpose of that is so that you can understand the common ploys that your offender uses so that you are not blindsided when they occur. So it's very helpful for your psyche and just your trauma overall to be prepared for what likely will occur in the future conversations. But I don't want you to stay isolated. I want you to, even if you don't feel like it, because oftentimes you're going to feel like you don't want to talk to anyone. You feel like your relationship is a sham, and it's such a heavy topic to bring up. But you don't have to talk about your relationship with anyone who's not safe. All you need is one or two trusted people in your life, a family member, a friend, a therapist, that's going to hear what you're going through and validate you and fully align with you, for you to experience that hunger for validation that you need when you're first discovering that you're in an emotionally abusive relationship. So you can step out and stop isolating by just having lighthearted, superficial conversations. Do an activity together, go to dinner together, go to lunch, go for a walk. Anything that gets you connecting with other people is going to help you find your sense of identity again, because it's so beaten down that you really need to not isolate for an extended period of time, because it's very difficult to heal in isolation. Connection is what will propel you into a healing space where you're learning to get stronger, more confident, that you realize you are lovable, you are worthy of healthy relationships. It's also going to create anxiety and hypervigilance. I'm going back to the effects of false accusations. It creates a lot of anxiety. Imagine if you're accused of something you did not do. It is naturally, anybody who's accused of something they didn't do, it's naturally going to create anxiety in them. It's it's a natural human response to being blamed for something you're not responsible for. A healthy person wants to take responsibility for what they can, but to be blamed and have people mischaracterize you and think badly or poorly of you in ways that are not true is very dysregulating. It leads, all this anxiety and this dysregulation leads to a sense of hypervigilance, where you have this anticipatory fear that more trauma is going to come, more anxiety is going to come, this overwhelming feeling that you need to defend yourself against things that, aren't true. And that is a natural trauma response. But if you can really understand the methodology that your offender is using against you, you will be less anxious and less traumatized. You'll be able to say, okay, that is them. I'm not going to take this on. That's not true. This is a false accusation, another ploy. I'm not going to engage. You can either say that to them or you can say it to yourself internally and choose to disengage and not enter that crazy making conversation, and certainly, refrain from defending yourself and spare yourself all that wasted energy. So there's a detachment that happens from your sense of self if you're falsely being accused. You start to lose a proper perspective of who you really are, because of how disorienting they are. It may take you hours after a conversation or days to actually realize what happened. So I just want you to recognize that those feelings that you may have, maybe you're feeling them now, because you were just recently falsely accused. That self-doubt and wondering, who am I really, and am I capable of what I'm being blamed for? Is this really true? It causes you to detach from your true sense of self. And I want you to recognize that feeling in your body so that you can reclaim yourself again, so that you can recognize it. It's just a ploy. It's just a tactic. It is not true. And it does not define me. Those false words, that false narrative does not define who I really am. So each of these feelings that you'll have are normal responses to being persistently accused, falsely, and manipulated. False accusations, it's like gaslighting. And Darvo, have you heard that the acronym Darvo? It stands for deny. So the offender denies. Let's say you raise a reasonable complaint, concern, or a hurt, or you confront something. They will deny. Then the A stands for attack. The R stands for reverse. The V stands for victim. And the O stands for offender. So deny, attack, and reverse the victim with the offender. So the offender plays the victim and you feel responsible. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. So learn about Darvo, recognize that it's a common tactic, just as gaslighting is a common tactic, where your reality is denied repeatedly. They may hold on to that false accusation and never let it go and insist that it's true, causing you to question your own perception. So it's so important to recognize it for what it is and to not fall trap into Darvo or gaslighting. So it turns accountability upside down and keeps you trapped in the guilt and confusion. And I want you to step out of that so that you recognize it for what it is. Feeling trapped in guilt and confusion can cause you to want to justify yourself and explain yourself. And I don't want you to waste any energy having a crazy making conversation with somebody who is not focused on accuracy. They're not focused on problem solving or reaching solutions. They're going to keep playing out a different emotionally abusive tactic to keep you in this crazy making maze of confusion. And false accusations, gaslighting, Darvo are just 3 of the behaviors that they'll use. So I don't want you to engage in that. I want you to take a step back and allow yourself to disengage. And that's something that you all need to learn to do if you're going to maintain your sanity. It's really important to recognize the patterns. Am I constantly defending myself against things that didn't happen? And that might take you a bit to recognize. You might, like I said, false accusations are effective. And if you don't recognize them for what they are, you go down the rabbit hole in the minutia, wondering if you're responsible. So, am I constantly defending myself? Recognize that that is a pattern. That is indicative of a pattern of behavior that's being employed. So you need to start determining what that pattern is. Do I feel like I'm walking on eggshells? That's another thing where you can't speak what's truly on your mind. You can't say how you really feel. You can't bring up issues and hope to have a healthy conversation that moves to a solution. Are you walking on eggshells? Is it going to cause the person to rage or to attack you? Has this pattern caused me to withdraw from others or question my worth? Recognize that in your body, because that's a clue that you're experiencing a pattern of abusive behaviors. So recognizing the pattern is the first step towards reclaiming clarity. And we always say that clarity is the first step to healing. So, how to protect yourself? Acknowledge the pattern. Understand the accusations are tactics, not truth. Take deep breaths or use other self-regulation techniques before you allow yourself to respond. I really want you to, I know that, let me say it this way. When you are blindsided by a covert behavior, an emotional behavior to undermine you, it is natural to go into a fight, flight, freeze, or appease response. It's a trauma response. It's involuntary. So it takes really hard work to learn how to regulate yourself and give yourself space and time before you react. Because if you react, it's understandable, it's explainable, but your reaction can actually make matters worse for you and for your relationship. So you really want to take a deep breath, give yourself a few minutes to think. Maybe you need to give yourself an hour. Maybe you need to give yourself a day because it's so traumatizing based on what was said. But just give yourself permission to not engage, to step away from that conversation, to collect your thoughts, to get that clarity that you need in order to be able to, instead of react, but respond in a calm yet firm manner. Recognize your body. What is it telling you? Get in tune with your body. Your body is going to know first that something is wrong before your mind, because your body is going to feel it and it will dysregulate you cognitively. So start getting really in tune with your body and trusting the messages your body is sending you. And then learn to set the boundaries. I won't argue about something that didn't happen. That's a perfectly appropriate thing to say. Or you can say, you're acting crazy. Or you can say, you have a pattern of falsely accusing me of things that I never said or did. That's about your character, not mine, and I'm not going to engage. You can say that, or you can just simply say it to yourself in your mind and walk away. You know best what is appropriate for the type of offender that you're dealing with. I don't want you to set firm boundaries with somebody who's physically abusive where your safety is at risk. But most of the people that come to the Men Project are dealing with covert emotional abuse. And so in cases like that, it's okay to say, no, and to show your strength, to show that you're not going to be that weaker victim that falls into their maze of confusion, that where they control the narrative and they control you. You are stepping back from that and you are showing strength, that you name it for what it is and you disengage. So a key point is to stop engaging in the baiting tactics. It's best to remain calm. It's best to give yourself time. It's best to tap into regulating techniques. For me, I used my fingers, and because it helped me to feel myself touching. So I counted to 10 on my hands, and I did that as many times. It was just a way to go, don't react, don't react. Take a deep breath, count to 10, maybe count to 50 if I needed to. But it was just a reminder. This is my reminder. I feel like reacting. I feel like blurting something out that I'm going to regret because it's probably some degree of nonsensical, or I'm really out of my core self. I am now in a reactive mode rather than in a mode where I'm thinking clearly and can really think about how I want to respond. So it's do something that will remind you that this is a time you need to just be quiet and think about your response. Don't react out of trauma. And that is hard to not do. So you need to practice techniques. You could just walk out the door and go for a walk around the block. There's so many different techniques that you can use. Call a friend and have them help talk you off the ledge. But it's really important that you learn to do it for yourself. Maybe initially you can't, but it's so critical that you find out what works for you. And we have other workshops where we talk about ways to care well for yourself, to connect you with your core self, and to get out of that hypervigilant and reactionary state of mind. I also recommend that you document incidences. I talked about journaling, especially if you're in a legal or custody-related situation. Journaling can be a lifesaver. Write things down. I don't mean you have to write every little detail, but write down bullet points that document what actually occurred. Create a paper trail. Create a historical, factual thing. If it may be used in court, or it may just be for your own peace of mind, that you can say, I know what happened that day because I wrote it down right after it occurred. And now this person is saying something entirely different happened. I look here and I see that that's not true. Sometimes we just need to see it in writing to validate ourselves. And it grounds you in reality instead of all those feelings of self-doubt and worry and fear and anxiousness. It will help ground you. And it's wonderful to share with a therapist or a trusted friend, or to have the documentation for the courts. I also really recommend that you lean on support. Reach out to people who see truth and who can affirm your experiences. Having a safe person who's patient and supportive will provide you with the much needed validation until you reach a point where you alone know your truth is enough. You don't need the approval of other people. You have grown enough in strength. And that's a goal, to grow enough in strength that you know yourself, you know your worth, and you know what's true. You don't need other people to define that for you and to process that. You've grown enough strength and knowledge and regulation over your trauma to be able to do that for yourself. Know that you're not to blame. False accusations are abusive, and abuse is a choice made by the abuser, and abuse is never the victim's fault. So don't take on any blame. You're not responsible for someone else's lies or need for emotional control. The abuser's prior trauma or character defects are never an excuse for abusive behavior. Your confusion, your exhaustion, and pain, they're valid. But once you see the patterns and have gained clarity about what's happening, you won't expend energy on things that aren't true, and you will get yourself out of that victim mode and you'll become more of a survivor on your way to being a thriver. You will be strong enough to be able to do that for yourself, because nothing you say or do is going to change the offender. Change is something that comes from within each of us who desire it. And frankly, statistics show that most offenders don't desire change. They like what they're doing. It works for them. And they're so unaware of what a healthy relationship should look like that it's hard for them to even grasp all the hard work that they really need to do in order to change. They're lazy. They would rather keep things the same. It works for them. But you can change the dance. You can change you. You can change how you interact so that you can find your power again. I'm not saying power over another person, but power over yourself. Power over how much you're willing to get into the vortex of insanity in a conversation, or how much control you have, power over yourself to say, no, I'm not going to let that upset me. That is their deal, and I'm not going to let it impact me. So you don't want to power over anyone else, but you want to take power over your internal thoughts, the ways you're speaking to yourself, the way you think about yourself. Those are things that need to change. Instead of having a lot of self-doubt or feeling you're unlovable or feeling something's intrinsically wrong with you, you start being able to message yourself that you are a wonderful, integrous person, that sure, you might have some faults, but they aren't anything that would cause this kind of chaos. You are not the person causing the chaos. You are a person seeking a healthy relationship, which is perfectly appropriate, and it's worthy to commend yourself for. So you can start changing those internal messages. You want to rebuild trust in yourself, build self-compassion, and a sense of curiosity instead of self-blame or self-loathing. Change the way you speak to yourself and your mind. Abuse wears you down and causes a lot of self-questioning. It impacts your feelings about who you really are. So I want you to give yourself a lot of grace and learn about the stages of healing. Set goals for yourself regarding your internal beliefs about yourself. If you know that you message yourself in a really toxic way, write down what those negative messages are, and then write down positive ways you can overcome that messaging, and focus on speaking, like integrating those positive messages into your psyche. It's not something that's going to change without you identifying what you're doing and changing the language that you speak to yourself. And it might mean that you need to do therapeutic work about your relationship with your parents in your childhood. Maybe your parents caused you to feel that way about yourself, either through maltreatment or by being emotionally unavailable to you and causing you to not ever really feel confident in your perspective. Emotional unavailability from a parent can cause you to feel a lot of self-doubt about your worth. And when you have that self-doubt, you don't have confidence in your ability to judge and discern things accurately. And you have negative messages. That's a worthwhile effort to work through with a therapist. And I also recommend the book. I've recommended it many times, The Human Magnet Syndrome by Ross Rosenberg. It will help in that journey as well. Give yourself permission to believe what's really true. Abusers steal power from you. It's time for a place of radical acceptance. See things for what they actually are. Stop that cognitive dissonance that you have, where you have these magical thoughts that an apology means they're going to really change. Their apology probably didn't come with reparations that were commensurate to the harm they caused you. It probably didn't come with changed behavior or a true repentance, a true sorrowful heart. It's probably a topical apology. So stop engaging in magical thinking that that somehow means that it's better for now. It's not. The pattern is just going to continue. And maybe the pattern is going to include an apology, but the pattern of abuse is still going to continue. So that apology is nothing. It's just empty words that they use to manipulate you and make you believe that things are going to be different. So see things for what they really are. Stop hopium, like opium. It's a drug. Hope is like this drug based on unrealistic outcomes. You have this hope for something unrealistic to happen. Retake control of yourself. Get that radical acceptance. Stop gaslighting yourself. See things for what they really are. And if you need help, consider finding a good therapist or joining a support group. There's so many online support groups and it's so helpful to have a community of people that you see them at different stages in their growth, and they can speak into your situation and you can observe, or you can speak into theirs. It's really healthy, and I highly recommend that. Pause and ask, what do I know to be true? What am I feeling? If you don't believe in yourself, no one's going to do that work for you. You need to dig deep. In some cases, force yourself to do the opposite of what you usually do. Do things also that used to bring you joy, or find new things that will uplift your spirits away from the offender. There's a huge world out there waiting to embrace you, and there's countless activities to choose from. So don't stop searching until you find a few things that you really connect to, where you can connect with people in lighthearted ways. You need to do things that produce endorphins, these positive hormones in your body, to counteract the stress hormones that are surging through you. And that takes effort. When you feel like isolating, you need to actually do the opposite. Step out and do the opposite, and step into the world. Do an activity. Do something creative, like an arts or craft class. Do something physical where you're expending energy. Even better if you join a class to do that, so that you see the same people each week. Stretch yourself. Sometimes the hardest part is just putting on your tennis shoes to go outside. Just make yourself do it, or have somebody be your accountability partner that will hold you accountable to getting out the door and being active. Begin restoring connection to your internal compass, so that when your gut tells you something's off, that you can actually trust it. When you've been beaten down a long time and falsely accused, you lose trust in your ability to discern. So I want you to get so in touch with your body and really look at things accurately, so that you can trust your gut again. So when your body gives you a signal, you can know what it's telling you, that you aren't just automatically going into self-doubt and not aware of what your body is saying. You had a lot of trauma dumped onto you. It's not who you were originally. In other words, it's not who God made you to be. So the more you connect outside of abuse, the more you will begin to trust your body's signals and intuition and gut instincts. So I'm just going to recap a couple of things. You want to journal to affirm your voice and experience and to have a paper trail. You want to educate yourself. Learning the tactics used against you brings clarity and peace. You want to radically accept the truth, see it for what it really is, not for what you hope it would be, but what it actually is. It's time to accept it. You want to, if you can, engage in trauma-informed therapy, or if you can't afford that, an online or in-person support group sometimes I think is even better than therapy, because you're learning from other people and you're learning their mistakes. You're seeing the mistakes in them because you're not personally associated with their story, and you see their growth, and it inspires you to want to attain the same things. It's very impactful. So you want a community of people who validate your story. But I want you to get to a place where once you've received that validation, you can stop seeking it. You need to get to that place where your belief in yourself is enough. You are the only adult in your life who needs to approve of you. Stop needing the approval of others to define who you really are. That's a goal to strive for, and it is achievable. I'm not saying if you're still in the thick of it that you do need validation to help you trust yourself, because it's so crazy making. But once you have accepted what's happening and you recognize it, I want you to keep your eye on the goal, to get strong enough to a point that you just need yourself to know what's happening, and to love yourself and to treat yourself with kindness and respect, and with firm boundaries that you're not going to ever tolerate this sort of behavior again. So now, before I go to questions, I just want to again invite you to join our Restore coaching calls. It's such a safe and supportive space where you can ask questions, gain clarity from other people's questions, and receive encouragement on your healing journey. You're not alone. We are here to walk alongside you. So I hope that you'll join that. And if you haven't yet, I encourage you to consider taking the Men Project's Finding Clarity and Healing in Difficult, Confusing, or Abusive Relationships course. It is, I promise you, it will jumpstart you on your healing journey. You will feel so much better about your circumstances after you take this course. You'll have so much clarity and knowledge. You'll be in a much stronger position and a much more prepared position to even engage in therapy, because you won't, graduates regularly report that taking the course saved them about a year of traditional therapy. That first year is processing through the minutia and all that you're ruminating over. This course will eliminate the need to do that. It's only 4 modules long, and it's self-paced, so you can go at your own pace. So that's, I just want to reaffirm you're not alone. You can begin your story again. You can find the tools to help you find that person, to find accurate hope in the future. And you can find a place where you invite other people into your life that are going to uplift you, and where you uplift them. So now I would like to open it up for any questions that you may have.
Very good, Annette. We have about a dozen questions here, and so we'll see if how we can get through these. So I'm going to go ahead
Sure.
and just get started. How do I deal with an alienated child to whom the narcissist has badmouthed me so well that the child repeats slurs and independently gaslights and attacks me?
Well, what I recommend, but I want to refer you to a website called Coercive Control Consulting, because they have courses on this website about the very thing you're talking about. And it's Dr. Christine Cocciola, and she has not only personal experience, but she's a therapist, and this is her focus. I recommend that rather than saying anything that disparages the other parent, that you focus on your relationship with the child. So, in other words, you're just showing up really well for that child. You might say something like, honey, I know that's what you've heard, but it's not true. And I don't, I don't want to burden you with anything more. This is for adults to handle. I'm here to love on you and support you and be your best advocate, and so you might do extra things like going out to lunch on a breakfast on a Saturday morning, one-on-one with the child, or doing special little outings where you have that quality one-on-one time where it gives you a place to say, tell me about your week, or tell me 3 good things that happened at school this week, and tell me 3 things that disappointed you. Where you have it's never a good idea to go, so how was your week? It's too open-ended. Just ask specific questions and then be a really good listener and be super supportive and say, gosh, I can understand why you feel that way. Either that's wonderful if it's something positive, or, how did that make you feel? Are you feeling anxious, or are you feeling sad? Just being there for them, not interrogating them, but being there, being a supportive person, because over time, they're going to see who's the person that's disparaging the other one, who's the person that's safe. When someone is being disparaged, it actually creates anxiety in the child. And you're going to be that parent that doesn't create anxiety. You're going to be there solely for them. You're going to be such a good listener and a supporter and love on them. And now, if they're old enough and if they are curious, if they want to know the truth, I recommend you still don't disparage the other parent, but you could use our tools, the terms and definitions, and the maze of confusion, and you can show them. You could even say, this is a type of relationship that is not healthy, and you can just discuss it in a generic way and say, you need to look out for this in the future when you choose a spouse or when you date someone. And you can say, this is what I was experiencing with your other parent. I don't want to say any more, but I just want you to understand that there's healthy ways to communicate, and then there's ways that are unhealthy that cause a lot of problems and chaos. And that is why I'm not in that relationship anymore. But I want you to have a wonderful relationship with that person. But I also want you to be aware of these things, these tactics that might be used, so that you can see them and that you won't be confused. There's depending on their age, there's things that you can do. But the most important thing is to not impose on them disparaging remarks, and to really be there for them, work on your relationship with them. And over time, I believe that most of them come around and see that, if they give you the opportunity to spend quality time with them.
Okay. Next question is, what would the courts need to see in order to understand this pattern in a divorce custody situation? I have wrote down majority of the situations the past few years, but it's a lot of documentation and I can't imagine the court would actually review it all. And I actually feel like they would think I am crazy with all the documentation. So what would they need to see in order to understand false accusations?
Well, that is where I'm going to refer you to coercive control consulting again, because she deals with the courts and she does a really good job. And I also want to refer you to a chat GBT. It's actually not chat GBT, but it's called Amy Says. And you can actually download questions like this and some of your documentation and have it be have them rewrite it in a way that is really applicable for the courts to see. But I honestly, I highly recommend that you take advantage of coercive control consulting because that's their expertise. Obviously, you can't bombard them with um, everything, but if there's, for example, if they're co-parenting with you and they are being interruptive in terms of visitation or inconsistent or changing plans in the last minute, things of that nature that's important to document. And then if they are actually accusing you in court of something, then I think it's important to say, this is a pattern. On so-and-so date, I was falsely accused. On so-and-so date, I was falsely accused. Like you can just say a pattern of behavior. You you may or may not want to say what you were falsely accused of, depending on what it was, but you can show a history. I also recommend that you have an attorney who's experienced in narcissistic abuse so that you can ask them specifically how you can edit your documentation, what is going to be helpful and what is not. And I'm thinking of, oh God, I just learned of another service. I'm going to have to, if you email me, I will try to find, there's another service that helps you in court understand what to present and what not to present. And I'm just drawing a blank on it right now. But I'm not a lawyer. That's not my expertise. So that's kind of what I have for you. Sorry, it's not more.
No, that's very good. And we have several comments in response. Just it's very relatable. In fact, one person said they wish they had this workshop before they went to court. So several people can relate to going through this. It is really common. I hope that response was helpful. And you can email us at info@themenproject.com for that information pertaining to the courts that Annette was referring to. I'm going to move along because now we have almost 20 more questions. So,
Oh God. Okay.
Annette, somebody just asked what was the name of the 4-module program that you first talked about? And I'm not sure what this is in reference to.
Yes, it's finding clarity and healing
Oh, yes, our course.
in difficult, confusing, or abusive relationships.
Yes, and that link will be in the chat as well. That's our MEND course. Okay, very good. I thought I missed something reading all these questions. Okay, very good. Here we go. Mm. Okay, Annette also talked about, I'm just going to say this real quick, Annette, to answer. There's several questions about coercive control. And the person is Dr. Cocciola, Christine Cocciola. And you can Google her and find her fairly easily. And we'll also drop a link to that in the chat as well.
Yes, it's coercive control consulting.
Yes. Okay. All right. What do you do when they truly believe that you did something you did not do and are able to give you all the details of what happened? For example, I tend to look around at other people a lot. ADHD is in parentheses. He said that I checked out multiple men when we were out. I felt like his perception was wrong because I try so hard to not look. He was hurt and spiraled, and I told him I wouldn't entertain that. He got more angry. He said he just wanted me to understand his feelings and apologize. So that's a false accusation, a clear one. And do you want to address that?
Um, I want to caution you because somebody who is jealous in that way, it's something that very often escalates into much more severe types of abuse. So I would really avoid engaging in that and setting a really good boundary for yourself. If you are a faithful person, that should be enough. And if you accidentally look at somebody, I mean, I look at people, I can even tell my husband that guy is really attractive, or he'll say that woman is really attractive, or I'll say that woman is really attractive. I mean, it should be no big deal. It's just, it's admiring people that look pretty or whatever. It shouldn't be a threat, unless it's a very, unless there's a history of infidelity and lust over another person in a disrespectful way, where they're ignoring you because they're, when you're in a conversation and they're looking at other people. I would really caution you to not engage in that. It's a downward spiral of a trap where you're constantly going to have to defend yourself. I would just simply say it's not true, and I'm not going to entertain that. I'm a good person. I'm a faithful person. I look at everyone. I like to people watch, and it has nothing to do with me looking at men. I I understand that his feelings might be hurt, but that's something he needs to deal with. He needs to not be so controlling and insecure that it's a way to control you. It's a way to downgrade your value in the relationship, to make you subservient to him. It's a domineering tactic. So if at the very least you find a good therapist that you can talk to about this, or that he can talk to about this, and that you can have the permission to speak into it, where you set your limits and say, I'm not going to engage in this. I really caution you to not engage and not entertain this sort of thing. I mean, it's okay to say, honey, I love you. I'm so not interested, but I'm going to people watch. And I'm more interested in looking at how women are dressing than I am looking at men. You could give a brief excuse or explanation, but I wouldn't engage in you having to apologize and be so responsible for his feelings. He is responsible for his own feelings, and he has a distorted view. He's hypersensitive. He's hyper jealous. And that's where I caution you. I wouldn't want to engage in that too much.
Really,
I
really,
hope that, yeah.
really good. Thank you, Annette. This next one says, I'm unsure how to proceed with the following situation. I found out he was secretly recording me when I stepped outside to have private conversations. Now it makes sense. He accused me of cheating, which I found bizarre, but I've since learned he was actually the one cheating. The situation became clearer when I realized he had recorded me on the porch, mentioning the name of the person he was involved with. He then sent this recording to my attorney, accusing me of stealing her identity. I've never even seen her driver's license. I only saw a letter addressed to her, which confirmed my suspicions about the affair. What should I do next?
Hmm. Well, I'm a little confused, because how could he tape record you but you also have an attorney? So are you in the midst of a separation, or is this not a family law attorney? I'm a little confused. I think I need a little more clarity on that.
Okay, let's see if more comes in. That was from the Q&A box. Okay, let's see. No, there's no
I
response.
honestly, it's so ridiculous. I would tell the attorney the truth. if you have access to the attorney. Just write a letter, document it. I I was being tape recorded, which is illegal in a lot of states. You can't tape record your spouse without them knowing it, and say, this is a tactic because he's actually having an affair with this person and he's trying to divert focus off of his activities and falsely accuse me of something I'm not responsible for. I would just write it out and maybe say the same thing to your husband. This is just a tactic because you're caught in an affair and you're trying to divert the focus off yourself and falsely accuse me of something I'm not responsible for. I would not engage much more than that. I wouldn't get all emotional, and I would just, I mean, I hope that you're not going to re-engage in a relationship with him while he's having an affair. I would be really firm about my boundaries and limit my conversations. It's very manipulative what he did.
Yeah, somebody else has it looks more like oh no, it's a comment with a question that follows up about recording. And it says, my current husband is very much into IT and technology, and he has taken videos of myself and my children with reactive abuse and has manipulated, and it says, edited and cut out the original abuse that he did. I'm scared people won't see through this and will negatively impact me in a divorce custody situation. Is there anything you would recommend to defend myself or have others see the true story?
I would document, if you have access to these recordings, I would document what actually occurred. And I would record him without him knowing it if he is abusive, especially if he does anything like rage. If he's punched a wall or done any damage or threatened you in any way, I would get a restraining order to document that he is the abusive one, because if he's planning this against you, you have to know he will say and do anything to make you out to be an abuser. And that's why it's so important. Like, whoever gets there first often wins. And so if he has done anything like driving erratic or punch a wall or cause any damage to anything, I would absolutely try to get a restraining order, because you can get it for those purposes. And if he acts up and does something like that, I would call the police so that it's documented with the police, and stay calm. If there was reactive abuse, I don't know to what degree, if you were physically harming him. For those who don't know, reactive abuse, I really like the word reactive defense, because it's when you're in that trauma state and you react to abuse and you lash out and you're reacting, you're not responding, which is an involuntary trauma response. Will oftentimes, the true abuser will record incidents like this to paint the victim as being the actual abuser. So it's really important to document what occurred. I would do whatever I could to record him. And the final and most important thing is, you have got to get control of your reactions. You have got to disengage from him. You need to work on that. If you need help with a therapist or joining a support group, where you're dealing with, you hear how other people are growing and getting stronger so that you can regulate yourself. It's so important, because you will end up potentially in a lot of trouble or being completely falsely accused and mischaracterized by law enforcement or by the courts, even though what you did is perfectly explainable and it's justifiable when you've experienced repeated abuse. So you really need to spend time on learning how to regulate your emotions and to bite your tongue. If you literally have to bite your tongue to not react, to not respond, to be able to laugh in your head and go, he's doing his crazy thing again, and I am not engaging. I am walking away. If he follows you or backs you in a room, you call 911 and you have him removed from the home and you go get a restraining order. You do whatever you can to stay calm and to catch him in his behavior. If he is not raging and punching walls and it's more covert forms of abuse, it's really hard to record that and have somebody else understand it for what it is. It makes your reaction look out of proportion to what they did. And that's another reason why I really implore you to, reactive defense is a real thing, and it explains what's happening, but it doesn't mean it's going to be an excuse or excused in a court of law. So you really need to get help regulating your trauma. I hope that helps.
Yeah. We have a lot more here, so I'm combing this real quickly. Um,
Okay.
okay, we have one here from a gentleman who says, Annette, where do you go when your separated wife's lawyer tells you that you are overreacting when telling your real estate agent you did not agree to my wife giving out the security code to our house without consulting me? My wife has informed her lawyer she feels I am trying to exert control. I feel I have nowhere to go, and my wife gets to act on my behalf without my knowledge or consent. We have another gentleman here who's also looking for support. Um, we do know that it can be more difficult for men to find support in these situations. So, Annette, if you want to speak to that and address the comment, that would be great.
Yes, I'm sorry. I know that there are groups out there and I should know what they are so that I can provide those resources for you. I will commit to finding those resources and putting them on our website for men. Um, the situation, I'm not sure I fully understand. Um, Giving the security code out to whom? Um, Friends in her life? Are you separated? You're living outside the home? There's only so much you can do if you're not living in the home. I I I don't want to agree with your attorney, but I want you to pick your battles. You can always change that security code later if you reoccupy the house. But I don't think you're gonna, I think there's some things you have to let go of and some things you have to fight. And if you fight everything, you're you risk losing credibility with your lawyer. You want to show that you're reasonable and that you're flexible and that you can reach compromises. If you, I don't know the full scope of how this impacts you. So I don't mean to minimize it. It may have a lot of ramifications that I'm unaware of, but I just want to say to pick your battle. And you might need to find an attorney that understands the situation better, um, somebody that understands covert emotional abuse, but also check yourself and try to listen to what your attorney's saying and see if it's something that you can let go of, so that you're not, like I said, battling over everything. So it's so hard for me to give you advice when I don't know the full scope of all the ramifications of giving your security code out. I'm sorry, I can't tell you more.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult when we only have limited information.
Yeah,
But thank you for addressing that, Annette. We have several more
sure.
questions here. I do want to ask this one. I think it's a very common experience, and it says, what if you can't disengage? If I try to leave the room, he would follow me. If I try to lock myself in a room, he would take the door handle off. I couldn't remove myself from the situation. If I left the house, he would destroy things. It was so hard. So, how can people do this and deal with this?
Well, if he's destroying things and doing things to that nature, that crosses over into physical abuse, even if he hasn't assaulted you. And so you know what is best. I don't want to speak down to you and say what you should or shouldn't do, because nobody knows more than you do what the right, what will work and what won't. But I would strongly consider starting to plan an exit strategy where you then document these behaviors and you call 911. I mean, that's a great way to put him on notice. You lock yourself in a bathroom and he starts taking the handle off the door. You call 911 and you have them come out and say, this is what I deal with. He's harassing me. He's raging at me. He's following me. He won't let me have any space to just think. That they're going to make him leave the house. And you can likely get a restraining order, which would do the same thing, which would document that he is the person that is being abusive. Because people that are willing to do those things are willing to be very manipulative. He is extremely controlling and dysregulated and domineering. I would, your safety is at risk. Ultimately, these things escalate over time. And I don't know if you're able to leave. You may be in a situation where you're not, but you certainly can take time to start planning an exit, even if it takes you 2 years to get out, by taking some courses in school to get certifications to help you have a job and improve your earning capacity. There's so many things that you can do to start preparing quietly behind the scenes. Stashing away money. One way to do that is when you go to the grocery store, you buy small gift cards, small amounts, and you start stashing them aside so that you can start building up some funds to be able to leave. But I really want to caution you, because this kind of behavior, I've seen it so many times escalate into violence, and you need to be aware that your safety is at risk when you're dealing with someone like this. It's not, it's out of just, it's beyond the space of just emotional abuse. This is going into physical violence if he's damaging things, like I said. So I just hope that you'll be really careful. And so I don't recommend that you confront somebody that's acting that way, because your safety could be at risk. But if you have the courage, I highly recommend that you call the police. At least it would teach your spouse that you're not going to tolerate that behavior. But stay calm so that you're not responsible for anything. He will lie and say you assaulted him. But if you call when you're in a bathroom and the door is locked, and you call while you're there, you have a strong indication that you're the one that's going to be believed. So you have to be very strategic, very shrewd, and calm through these situations. I know I'm not telling you to disengage in a way that will incite his anger, but maybe you can just disengage in your mind and say, okay, he's having a crazy moment. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to be calm and not react, and try to quietly get to a space. Or, I mean, I don't know if you can go to a neighbor's. You said if you left the house, he would start destroying things. If he destroys something, I absolutely would call the police. but you know best what is right for you. And so I can only offer suggestions. But I'm I care most about your safety in this situation. I
Very,
hope that's somewhat helpful.
yeah, very good. Thank you, Annette. Um, let's see. Somebody writes, I have accused my husband, who is a covert abuser, of having an affair. For 2 years, he stopped being romantic, wanting me sexually. He withdrew emotionally. He would be gone for hours and not tell me where he went. He was going through Viagra. He now tells me I abused him by asking, and in his words, attacking and abusing him when I asked if he was having an affair. Do you want?
Well, that's just ridiculous. So I wouldn't take it on. I would say, look, these are the facts. You are missing for hours at a time without reporting where you are. You're not engaging in intimacy with me. You've gone through the Viagra. What else am I supposed to think? I'm not going to respond any further than that. I know what I believe. It's not abuse. It's a question. I'm asking you if you're having an affair. I'm entitled to ask that question. And if you want to mischaracterize it and falsely accuse me of something I'm not responsible for, I think you're more abusive by these behaviors than you are abusive by these behaviors. I'm not abusive by asking you a question that I'm entitled to receive an answer for. I just wouldn't take it on. I wouldn't, um, or you might just go, you know what, that's crazy talk. I'm not even going to entertain that. It's, you have to you have to think in your own situation what is best for you. um, you know, I can make suggestions, but I don't know the exact personality of your spouse. For me, I would, my style, which may not be your style, I tend to say, okay, it's crazy land again. You're being defensive and you're flipping the script around, you're blame shifting, and I'm not going to engage. But I expect you to resolve this in a proper way in a short amount of time, because the way it's sitting right now is not good for me. So I consider our relationship broken right now until you can fix this. That's what I do or did. When in the past I would just say, I'm not going, and it might be too strong for you, but I felt like in my situation, I had to be really strong and to hold a boundary and to say, I'm not just going to go and pretend, in 3 hours from now that everything is fine. That doesn't work for me. Either you address your behavior and stop this crazy talk while I disengage and correct it before I move. I'm willing to move forward and act like we're a happy couple. That's the kind of boundary I had to hold when I was going through this. So you have to find the right place, the right boundary for you. And we do have, we did a boundary talk last month, a workshop, and you might want to watch that, or you might want to read blogs on boundaries. But one thing I recommend that I can say right now is that you really need to overcome your fears about setting boundaries and only do what feels comfortable for you. Don't set a boundary that is beyond the scope of your comfort zone. Boundaries sometimes take baby steps before we can get to that place where I was, where I had to just be so strong. Um, there's a million little steps you can take. Just like, I don't like it when you falsely accuse me of things. That's one thing you could say. That's not even a boundary. You're just stating, I don't like it when you falsely accuse me or when you blame shift me for something you did. You could just make it simple like that. You have to find where on the spectrum of a boundary that you're comfortable with.
Really good. So much is going in the chat. So good. There are 7 more questions, I think, but I definitely wanna ask there's 2 of them that are connected, and I wanna ask this.
Yeah, I don't think we'll get to 7 because I have an appointment, but
Yeah.
let's try to pick, if you can, Jill, pick a question that seems similar to what other questions are so that we can um, satisfy the most amount of people. And
Yeah,
then I encourage, if we didn't get to your question, I'm so sorry. I love I love that we receive questions and I love answering them, but try to join our coaching call. It's only $10 a month and I'll spend as much time in there as I need to. So you might want to consider that. You could also send us an email and I can answer your question there.
so the question that I'm gonna share is, like, some of the other ones you've actually kind of touched on, but this you have not really touched on, and I think it's so good because it's unique, but it's only unique in that it was only asked by one person, but I think it's relatable in some ways, and in an important way, and I think you'll understand what I mean. Okay, so it says, can you describe at what point we can validate for ourselves that the abuse was reactive, a non fault nervous system fight or flight scenario? I understand there is still responsibility for staying. The abuse I experienced was almost entirely emotional and psychological by a person tested with schizoid and narcissistic characteristics. They also had a genius IQ. It was called enslavement by a coercive control expert. I still think, OMG, it's my fault. I reacted that way. But I had no control in the relationship, and I've been told it's coercive control. I still worry I'm the abuser. I've definitely done and said things I'm ashamed of, but later relationships have not shown it to be a pattern. And then it says, can these situations make you become a person you hate or are embarrassed about? Like, do it says do, but I think it says, like, so can you become abusive yourself? And if so, can you stop that? And I really found it powerful, the question of, can they make you become a person you're embarrassed about or that you hate? I feel like that is really common. And I don't know that we get that question a lot, but I do think a lot of people have been harmed, go through that. And there's a lot of shame in disclosing these situations because of that. I would love for you to speak to that and end everyone off with a little love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First off, let me just say, give yourself grace. My goodness gracious. I can't imagine. You have a genius IQ, a course of controller, and it's narcissistic. And I forget the other schizoid, I forget what you said, but I mean, that would be so difficult and so much of a brain tangle. Um, please give yourself grace. Of course, you were reactive. When until you discover that it's abuse, we are reacting. And most of us don't discover. Some people are married for 25 years before they uncover that it's emotional abuse. It's very confusing and very challenging. And the longer you stay in it, the more dysregulated you become and the more reactive you become. You're in full-blown trauma mode. Your mind is being compromised and your physical well-being is being compromised from all the stress. So the more your mind is compromised, the more fragmented your thinking is. There's so many legitimate reasons for you to participate in reactive abuse. I would not be hard on. I'm embarrassed by some of the things that I said and did um, years ago, and when my relationship was abusive, I I'm mostly embarrassed, and I really shouldn't be, but I'm mostly embarrassed that it took me so long to figure out that I'm arguing with somebody that is just going to change the script 18 times in one argument to where I don't even remember what started the argument in the first place. It's so crazy. It takes so many twists and turns. Why did that take me so long to see that this is a pattern of behavior? I was like stuck in the minutia and answering everything when he was just throwing out whatever he could to make me responsible and to protect himself from having to be held accountable or responsible. And I didn't track that. So um, give yourself grace. My goodness, it's very hard. And it causes it causes complex post-traumatic stress. It's very difficult to overcome that. You are not, let me say it this way, trauma causes you to act in ways that is not normal to your character. And especially when you're in recurring trauma and you don't ever get a chance to heal because the next event happens, daily or weekly or monthly or whatever it is, it's still very upsetting and dysregulating. And so you don't have a chance to heal and step back and observe what your behavior was and how it doesn't align with your core self. So can people learn? You ask, can people become abusive? I think sometimes in a relationship where you're fighting with someone, you're trying to have a discussion, you're in a conflict with someone, and it escalates to an argument with somebody that doesn't play fair, with someone whose motive is not to find a solution. Their motive is to win the argument. So they'll say or do anything. When you're in a situation like that, it's going to take you sometimes arguing at their same level in order to break through this pattern. Now, is that wise? No. Does that make you an abuser? No. And the reason why it doesn't, even if you're modeling some of the same behaviors, is because an abuser has an intention to power over and control. They are intentionally manipulating you. A person who's doing reactive abuse or adopting some of the same styles in order to navigate through an argument, your intentions are to reach solutions, to reach an emotional connection, to reach peace. Those are very different motives. You're not going to transition from an empathic person to a person who wants to power over and control and manipulate others. So I would absolutely take yourself off the hook. And any of you who have participated in reactive defense, take yourselves off the hook. Your motivations are to raise a reasonable complaint, concern, or a hurt. That's the way I like to say it. Because you want the person to understand where you're coming from so that you can talk about each other's feelings and you can deepen your emotional connection and move through to solutions so that things that are concerning you do not repeat and you can have a healthier relationship. That is a very pure motive, a very pure place to come from. And in healthy relationships, that is what is achieved through conflict. It's an opportunity to deepen your relationship. When you're dealing with an abuser, they just want to win the argument and they're going to say everything or anything to derail you. And so don't take on that responsibility. You're not going to change your whole character structure and become abusive. You are beautiful, you are lovable, and your motives are pure. You might be unhealthy while you're in a place of reactive abuse, but it's explainable and it doesn't mean your motives are toxic. It just means that you're not seeing your whole situation clearly yet. You're not catching the big picture. So you're stuck in the vortex. But that's nothing to be ashamed about. There's people, highly intelligent people that are in these situations. It's very confusing. There's therapists in these situations and they counsel people in abusive situations and realize later, oh my gosh, my situation, I'm counseling people, but I'm not following my own words in my own situation. So it's very complicated. So take yourself off the hook. And I want to tell everybody as we close to just take really good care of yourselves, love on yourselves, and give yourself grace. You deserve it. You're lovable. All right. Till next time, have a great day. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.